Hello and welcome to what will be my fourth outdoor shave. Today my wife and I are on the banks of the Willamette River. I have my setup right down here. You can see my mirror. I'm going to place the tripod on the stool. Have my bowls and goodies. Sun's starting to set. For us it's Monday evening. I think I'll upload this on Tuesday. Not the best terrain in the world, but I got my boots on and ready to roll. I'm going to stop the video and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm set up. Howdy neighbor, I'm Tobin. Chances are you aren't. My beautiful bride's over here to my right. Kids are at home, and that includes the four-legged ones. Just she and I out here along the banks of the Willamette, a river that runs from here all the way up to Portland and enters into the Columbia River, where it continues on to the Pacific. Today I'll be using my Proroaso shave stick, which I made from one of the soap tubs of Proraso. And I'll be using a matching aftershave balm, Proraso green. Today, I remembered to bring a rubber band. Hopefully you've been learning some things along with me. I know actually that you have been. I've been learning things. This is simply called a rubber band, and I'll never forget, even though I've probably heard it 1,000 times before. Today, I have with me my 1938 to 1945 fat handle Gillette Tech. And I'll be using, one second. Oh, there they are. I was gonna say, I thought I had my blades. I did a good product check or equipment check. So, spoke with Mike, old fart Mike, who I got this razor sheath from, and I'm probably learning more than anyone's ever going to learn from me. And something I've told my kids actually a bunch of times is that they have taught me more than I have ever taught them, and that's just the way it goes. And I've learned so much from so many different people in this community. One thing I learned this morning, Denmark and Denmark, there's a trail right over here on the other side where bicycles are going by. Denmark and Denmark, as I'm sure many of you are aware, but I wasn't, are the same thing. It's just a matter of what language you speak. The Danish call it Dane, and just about everybody else, from what I read, call it Denmark. If I have that wrong, please do correct me in the comments. Thanks to everyone's help, I was able to relocate some of my favorite blades. I'd had a 50-pack of them that I bought a few years ago. They ran out, and I reached out to the community a couple months back on Instagram, and a bunch of people came to my aid and put me in the right direction. And I bought a 100-pack of them. I believe they're still the same, just an updated package. Now I do believe that these Lord Platinums are different than the other Lord Platinums. I have 3 different packages of Lord Platinum at home. Maybe I'll attach a photo of those. I believe all 3 of those are the same blade. I think, however, that these are a different blade. I got my brush roll with me, and inside my brush roll, pick up my garbage, I dropped my wrapper. Inside my brush roll, I have my synthetic Omega Evo. I think it's definitely Omega's best synthetic knot. I do love their cheap Syntex That's what you call it, right? The $8 and $12 white ones. It's like a modern day nylon or something. I have 4 or 5 of them just because I like the colors. I have like green and yellow, red and blue. They're actually great little brushes. I love them. They're cheap. They're not the best, but I mean for $10, can't go wrong. This brush that I just threw into the river. My brush roll from Mike. This brush I just threw into the river, I think retails for what, 50, 70 bucks, something like that. So definitely paying more for a better brush. And I do think it's worth it, in my opinion. It is worth the price. I think it could be a little cheaper, to be perfectly honest. Find a place to set this here. Hope everyone's doing well. Again, I'm at the banks of the Willamette River, not too far from our home. Well, we 3 or 4 miles? 3 or 4 miles from home. We're so blessed here where we live. I'm soaking my brush just for a second here to get the bristles wet and soak my face. But we have so many great recreational places. It's just, if you lived here as long as I have, you might have a tendency to take it for granted. But I never really have. Right after graduating high school, I drove truck over the road for 3 years, 48 in Canada. Traveled up into 3 provinces of Canada. It's homemade. Just packed it in there real good. I've been to 45 of the lower 48. The only 3 I didn't make it up into was Upper New England, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. You guys see a critter come up from behind me, let me know, would you? My wife's reading a book. She won't see it, so I'm counting on you to let me know. Probably only about 4 or 5 miles from the place that we were at the other day, Doris Ranch, which is actually yesterday. I think by the time I get this uploaded, it'll be Tuesday for you guys. Got my mirror over here. I need to rely on it a little bit more. The camera is a little far away from me. Proraso Green was my first soap. It was actually the shave cream that I ever used that was non-Barbasol or non-Gillette goo. And I actually used it for quite a while before moving on to anything else. I didn't really know that anything else really existed. I think got way more than enough soap on the old face here. Hope your week's off to a good start. Ours is. My wife has Mondays off, so we get to spend Mondays together, especially this time of year when the kids are in school. We have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. They're both about to turn 18 and 14 here in just a couple of weeks. The 2 kids that are still at home are both March babies. And it's hard to believe that our youngest son, turning 18. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw that he wrecked his car a few weeks back. We got a new one yesterday, Forester. It's Subaru Forester. I don't remember what year. It's an older one, 98. My wife says 98. And he's of course happy as a clam because he's been without wheels for a while now. And he put so much time and money into his Acura. He's just happy to have a set of wheels. He had a taste of that freedom and then he lost it. And he also got a great taste of what it's like to put a lot of work, time, sweat, blood, and tears into something, and then to not only lose it, but to be the cause of it. I'm hoping is his learning lesson. I had a similar lesson when I was 16. He was 17, is 17. When I rear-ended the most beautiful, I think it was like a 1967 Corvette. Gorgeous. Had this like peach colored paint job. Some aftermarket paint job. It was definitely the guy's baby. I was this punk 16-year-old kid. It wasn't a cell phone. We didn't have cell phones back then. We didn't have beepers at the time. For millennials and Gen Y, Gen X, whatever you are. No, I'm Gen X. See, getting a little old. I'm not quite a boomer, but the old age is sitting in. Can't remember my head from a hole in the ground. Tried my best to keep the language PG-13 on here. No Bradley's watching. Alright, so I got my 1938, 1945 Fat Handle Tech, loaded with a Lord Blue Sword, platinum coated blade, first use. So I know most of you know that I'm a collector of vintage razors, and that I restore them. Something that's always been a pet peeve of mine, because I'm also, as I'm sure some of you are picking up on, I'm also a bit of a history buff. I've always been into history and geography. But a pet peeve of mine has always been people calling this razor a pre-war razor. Pre-what war? World War II started September 1st, 1939. This razor was first produced in 1938, but it actually didn't make it to market, to most markets in America or anywhere else in the world for that matter, till much after that. But it didn't make it to most markets in America until 1939. You know, we're talking way before the interstate system, you know, transportation and distribution, logistics and all that was a totally different world back then. So you can make something in 1938, but it's not going to get to some markets until 1940. It's just the way things were back then. It's not like today where you have Amazon and DHL and UPS that just, you know, get it to you in a jiffy. So my thing's always been pre-what war? World War II started September 1st, 1939, and it ended in 45. So that would mean that for this razor to be pre-World War II, we'd have to only be talking about the ones made in 1938 and those first months in 1939. It's definitely pre-Korea, but to get into technicalities, Korea wasn't really a war. Korea was a conflict. Korea was never declared a war by Congress. So it's just a pet peeve of mine. One of those things that, you know, doesn't really grind my gears, but I just don't like calling it a pre-war tech. So even though you'll see me list it as that on eBay or Etsy, it's only because that's what so many people call it. And been a few times I've even put that like in the description, but for the most part I've left it out. You know, I'm the one who's anal about it. Most of the world seems to accept it just fine. This Lord blade is doing great in this razor. Actually got enough water in the soap this go around. That's one difficulty I've been having. Making sure my soap is hydrated out here. blade gap on this one here. The ball end tech that I used yesterday, my 1954, blade gap on it, and they both have the same exposure and angle. It might be slightly different. They're the same. The gap is different. So the gap on the 54, the ball end, was a 0.020 of an inch. Blade gap on this guy is 0.025, which puts it the same blade gap as the regular flare tip, the 1940 Super Speed, and the Ranger Tech, which was made in 41 and 46. In fact, a lot of Gillette's razors have the 0.205 blade gap. Your 40s aristocrats, most of them, the president, the diplomat. Correct me below if I'm wrong. Let me pause this real quick. I didn't set my do not disturb and I got things popping up on my screen. Heard from Billy Butter, that's his handle on Instagram. Billy lives in Australia. Talking with Billy, Billy said Filberts are also called hazelnuts in Australia. Not that they grow them down there as well. I thought that was cool. I had no idea. There's a bird or something in them bushes right there. You guys hear that? I've always been intrigued. Big world. I got so many things on my bucket list, it's not even funny. One thing I learned driving truck over the road those 3 years is North America is full of natural beauty. Some of the most amazing people. In college, where I met my wife, I learned about Maslow's law of hierarchy. And driving truck, I basically saw it on display. I've heard so many times people talk about the way people are in certain places, and you know, New Yorkers are rude, or California drivers don't know how to drive. It's true. But from what I've found, that's all stereotypes. At the end of the day, we're all the same. Most of us just want to live our lives peacefully, provide for our kids. Canadians, eh? That's how they are. Texans. Everywhere I went. And the one thing I've learned is the bigger the group, the more knuckleheads there are. So California being so populated, definitely seems like there's a lot of bad drivers. But let me tell you, we got our fair share right here in Oregon. And during my travels, I saw them everywhere. Never forget one night when I was driving on Interstate 95, the I-95 in Florida. It was later in the evening. It was still light because it was summer. 7, 8 o'clock, something like that. People were driving. Can you still see me? Yep, good. No, I can't see my mirror. People are driving all over the place, driving like idiots. I'd looked over to the right. I was in the second lane from the far right, so I had 3 or 4 lanes to my left. Next thing I know, there's this minivan 50, 100 yards out in front of me, a couple of lanes over. And the road was wet. It had been raining earlier in the day, not too long before actually. And all of a sudden I look up and this minivan is just I'm driving a big rig. I believe I was empty at the time. I was headed down to Homestead, Florida to get some ferns to take back up into New England. It's one of those things that I'll never forget. But I believe bad drivers are everywhere. The bigger the group, the more bad apples you're going to find, right? The bigger the bucket. Do a couple of cleanups. What do you guys think of my location today? I like it. We looked at a few different spots before settling on this one. I'll tell you one thing that is definitely different though. People are all the same. Wherever I go, people for the most part, I've learned, are all the same. But what differs is the critters. Here in Oregon, we got all kinds of critters. None of them get too big. You know, we got, deer, bear, black bear usually. Not too many, not a lot of brown bear left anymore. But you don't see them either. Just like cougar. If you see a cougar, it's too late and you're probably SOL. But our bugs aren't that big. Down in Mississippi, y'all got some big ass bugs down there. Another one of my truck driving stories. Late at night, this summer, it's pulling into this rest area. And back then, I don't know if it's still the same way. We're talking 2001 to 2004, probably 2002, somewhere around there. Summer of 02, I think it was. Oh, I lathered up my whole face, not thinking. That's right. We'll do cleanup on the whole thing. Let's go for a fourth pass, guys. We'll just focus in down here. I'll wrap this up. But, pulling into this rest area, and back then, they had state troopers at all the rest areas at night. Keep trouble at bay. Drugs, prostitutes, that kind of stuff, I guess. It was dark. I was tired, like I usually was, running all the time. And by the time I got to this rest area, it was full. So I had to park out on the on-ramp, or the shoulder that leads into the rest area. And as I was driving to the rest area, I heard a few things hit my windshield. I assumed there were rocks or something on the road. Stepped down out of my truck. Hear this crunch, crunch, crunch. Keep in mind, back then, didn't have cell phones. I had a flashlight, but it was back inside the cab, inside the sleeper berth. Here's crunch, crunch. Stop, turn on my headlights, and that's when I look at the ground and actually get a good look at it. And the ground is just crawling. Giant bugs. At the time I didn't know what they were. I made my way up to the restrooms. Get up there, and big good old boy state trooper, and get to talking with him. Walk into the restroom. The things are just everywhere. They're in the urinals, they're on the walls, they're in the mirror, in the toilet paper rolls, everywhere. There's a swarm of locusts that had come through. I swear to God, they were bigger than a Buick. They're bigger than these damn squirrels. I'll never forget that. He starts telling me how he had a sister that moved out here. He thought that we had big bugs too. And I assured him we ain't got nothing like this. We got some big crane flies. Every now and then you might find a really, really, really big moth. Like a butterfly, but not a butterfly. A moth. It might just be my observation, But from my observation, people are all the same. With some exceptions, of course. The bugs. The bugs aren't the same. Neither are the squirrels. Not bad. No weepers. 4 passes. Not bad at all. That'll do, donkey. That'll do. I was going to do another outside video come Wednesday or Thursday of this week. We've got a bunch of rain showers coming, so I figured we'd get back out here today. It's our last sunny day that we're guaranteed for at least a little bit. Upload this when I get around to it. It'll be tomorrow, Tuesday, by the time I get it uploaded, I think. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate y'all making it this far if you made it this far. Gear again today was my Evo Omega synthetic. My 1938, 1945 Perry War. You got pre, Perry, and post. My Perry War or mid-war fat handle tech. My Perry War. Cool as I'd catch on, but I know it's not going to. But that's alright. Like I said, I know it's my quirk. My little thing. Oh! Brandon shaves, right? If Brandon doesn't see this, we gotta make sure I get this to Brandon. I got one last thing. A dad joke for you. Maybe you've heard it.
2,000 years later.
Oh crap. 1 second. I'll come back after everything blooms and you'll really get to see how green Oregon can be. Doesn't look really green right now, I know. We're still in winter here.